This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers Podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Bruschi, Stacey Cole, and Todd Michaels.
There is a big trial that is about to get underway. We've been talking about it for roughly 3 years now, the Kouri Richins murder trial. If all holds out, here we are. Jury has been seated. February 23rd in Summit County, nearly 4 years after Eric Richins was found dead from a fentanyl overdose. But heading into opening statements, the defense has landed some real pretrial blows, recanting drug source, witness intimidation allegations against the lead detective, excluded experts, and severed financial charges. Defense attorney and former prosecutor Eric Faddis is with us to help us break all this down. Eric, welcome. The man prosecutors say supplied the fentanyl, Robert Krauser. He's the big one for the defense here. He has signed a sworn affidavit saying he sold oxy, not fentanyl, to the housekeeper, Carmen Lauber. He says he was detoxing and out of it during his 2023 police interview, and the pills were never recovered or tested. As a former prosecutor, I gotta ask you, how dangerous is it for the state when the alleged murder weapon, the pills, was never forensically confirmed, and the one person in the supply chain who knew the pills what they were now says that that's not true?
You know, Tony, I think it's a real significant problem. Look, the jury's going to want to see substantiation of these allegations. You know, they're saying it was fentanyl. Okay, well, where is the fentanyl? Was it ever found in her house? Did they ever get some sample to test? My understanding is no. And so now not only do we have the person who says it was fentanyl saying it's not fentanyl anymore, but you don't really have any sort of toxicology or forensic analysis in terms of that substance. And connecting it to Kouri Richins. And so that's kind of the linchpin of this case is the fentanyl piece. And that appears on very shaky ground right now.
How does that work when somebody says, well, I did something bad, but it wasn't the bad thing that you're saying I did? How does that work?
Well, so certainly that source has some credibility issues, it appears. And the jury is going to have to evaluate that. You know, they're going to say, hey, was he lying to police about the fentanyl, or is he lying now saying it's oxy when it was really fentanyl? How much faith can we really place in this person's testimony? And that's why we have jurists to determine that credibility.
Can all of this just be true? And simply the answer to the question is a lot of the street oxy has fentanyl in it. And ta-da! You thought you knew you weren't selling fentanyl. You sold oxy, and the woman who bought it from you, the housekeeper, also knew it was oxy. Maybe she told Kouri it was fentanyl. Maybe Kouri thought it was fentanyl. Maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what everybody was saying to each other on the name of the street drug they were buying, because at the end of the day, no matter what they called it, there was still fentanyl in it.
Mm-hmm.
Very well could be, but if I'm defense, I'm objecting to that kind of information coming in that a lot of street oxy contains fentanyl. What's the source for that? Did the prosecution have an expert who's going to get up there and say that? And they tested 100 samples and 30 of them came back with fentanyl. I'm not sure they have that evidence to back it up, and so I think that could fall under speculation, and the judge may preclude such an inference that a normal person might draw, but in the court of law, things are a little more stringent.
True. I mean, obviously there's that, but the fact that this drug itself that went from person to person to person, there's nothing in here that's saying I didn't sell it. It's just saying it wasn't fentanyl that I sold. It was oxy I was selling. That I think is the difference, because it's not completely eliminating this chain of custody of this drug. It's just saying, oh, we got the name wrong somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And one question that also arises is how does this source know exactly what that substance was? Are they a chemist? Are they a doctor? No.
Exactly.
There could be a lot of different ideas about what this source thought this substance was, and perhaps the jury will hear about those things.
Well, and legitimate pharmacies can make mistakes. What do you think a drug dealer could do?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and also let's just talk about credibility here. I mean, this is something that the Richins defense is certainly grasping onto with both hands and feet, and probably putting their chin over the bar too, because this is really good stuff. But at the same point, it's like one of the only lifelines that are out there for them. So they're really going to make this into a big thing. The credibility of the guy is shit. I mean, changing the story, I was strung out, so I really don't know what I was saying at the time. This is not a very credible witness, period, honestly, for either side. The defense really needs this to be a credible witness. For the prosecution, does not have the same weight.
Yeah, I generally agree. And it's going to be, I'll be interested to see how this person presents to the jury, what they look like, what their demeanor's like as they're describing these previous discrepancies and inconsistent statements. Are they going to try to explain them away? That's going to be difficult. But as you know, defense has to plant a seed of doubt. They don't need to necessarily prove this confidential informant was telling the truth 100% about everything. They just need to get the juries to start, scratching their head and saying, wait a sec, this seems bizarre. And does that translate into reasonable doubt? It could be a big component of it.
Just weeks before jury selection here. Weeks before jury selection. We're not just saying weeks before jury selection took place. Defense attorneys released text messages showing lead detective Jeff O'Driscoll allegedly threatening a witness with arrest and and this is where I think it really kind of goes off the rails, because it's one thing, you sometimes do have to threaten people with arrest to compel them to show up. But then you get to verbiage of a catch pole for your dog.
Yikes.
In there. I mean, candor, hold it back. Just, take a beat before you add that sentence to the email. If she didn't cooperate with the trial prep. A second witness said investigator Travis Hooper warned their immunity could be revoked if they didn't meet with prosecutors again. Talk about this a little bit. Is this something that's being blown into something bigger than it is, or is this starting to border into witness intimidation? I've heard that thrown around. What's your take?
The purported threats to revoke immunity if the person doesn't cooperate, that's actually pretty standard. That doesn't, that's not terribly controversial in my opinion. However, the statements from the lead detective about, getting some device to detain the dog if you don't help out, the optics of that are a nightmare. And it makes this guy look like a villain. And that reflects on the prosecution, who are supposed to be the good guys. They're supposed to be in there, with the white hats trying to get to the truth and find justice. And you have this lead detective threatening to take somebody's dog, shows he has a real interest, at least a personal interest, in the outcome of this case. And could that have shaped other parts of the investigation? Defense will certainly bring that up.
What it brought up in my head was, I'll get you and your little dog too. It was just this, excuse me, who are you? Are you a professional or are you the frickin' wicked witch? I mean, that's not how you act in the legal system, is it?
No, I mean, that sort of adds this kind of nefarious, ominous tone to that side of things, which could be problematic.
Time.
Yeah, I mean, optics are everything, whether it's legal or not, or just, overstepping, or they felt for some reason. I mean, the context is everything, and we don't know the context of their communications. Who knows what kind of, if there was or not some sort of adversarial communication going on. Who knows if I don't know. You could completely speculate on why that may have been made, whether it's just out of spite or maybe someone threatened to sick their dog on them. So it may make logical sense to say, and the dog pole is coming too. There might be more to that, but without knowing it, it's hard to really speculate. Judge Marzik excluded the prosecution's domestic violence expert. Let's talk about this, because one of the levers that the Richins campaign defense wanted to pull here was saying that Eric had been abusive in the relationship. That Kouri had a video as well. The video's never surfaced. There's no images that's ever surfaced. It's only been Kouri's words, and there's been no one to back it up. There's been no witnesses that say, yes, I witnessed anything physically violent. That's what she was talking about physical violence here. They were going to try and use it as though it's a pathway to violence, some sort of framework there. When you don't have any sort of evidence in something like this, yet you want to bring it up. I know it's been excluded, but is that the right move? Is that the common move to do in something like this when you really just can't back it up?
Both sides are limited in terms of the experts they can proffer to a jury, and they're limited by what the evidence is. There has to be this nexus between the experts' opinions and the substantial evidence in the case. And it sounds like the judge ultimately determined, hey, this is a fine theory, but it's not significantly connected to this case in a demonstrable evidentiary way. And so it sounds like that was probably the right ruling. The judge doesn't want the jury to confuse issues or develop some kind of bias or prejudice based on an expert whose opinions may not be particularly pertinent to the evidence the jury is deciding.
And it's a hot button issue. I know a lot of people I've seen comments on this where, and I think it goes through everybody's prism too. Anyone who's been through physical violence or abuse are going to naturally be more sensitive to this, without a doubt, because you've experienced it. And then when someone makes the claim, you do want to believe them, but the reality is you can't believe it every time. You can. This is a woman who's being accused of murdering him. So of course, if you can get some sort of sympathy or empathy from a jury, you're going to make that claim. The shitty part about it is that even if it is true, it's a very hard one to prove. If there is no evidence of it. And I guess some would say the way that she seems to, claims to have documented this or made claims that it was documented and then never backed that up, never came back with the receipts that she claimed she had. What does that tell you about the legitimacy of the claim in general? If you're gonna walk out there and say, I can prove it with a picture, and then you don't have the picture, I mean, obviously the jury's not going to hear that part, but all of us on the outside did.
Well, yeah, and if Kouri Richins testifies, which is a huge if, the prosecution can try to bring up prior acts of dishonesty. Yeah. So is coming forward and saying, hey, I have this evidence of this horrible, wrongful conduct on behalf of this dead guy, and it's going to make me look good, and I'll show you guys, and then she can't show anything. Is that an act of dishonesty? Is that something that the jury might be able to consider in deciding her credibility? If she testifies, I think that's potentially on the table.
No. What's about the 26 separate financial crime charges? Let's talk about that for a second. This was a win for the defense, and we're focusing on the defense right now. They wanted to bring up those charges of financial crimes, mortgage fraud, money laundering, bad checks into the murder trial to prove motive. Very similar to the Alec Murdaugh trial, where, see, this is all part of the story. Maybe not quite, directly, but it's part of the context of the story. And it would prove motive as to why she maybe did this, to reap the rewards of the insurance money and then to be in control of all of the money. Judge Marzik denied both of those requests and blocked evidence from those severed charges. How does the defense exploit that ruling to keep the jury focused strictly on whether the state can prove Kouri poisoned Eric?
I think it's a huge win for the defense, because we saw in the Alec Murdaugh trial, like you mentioned, there were just this list of all of these alleged financial crimes, and it made him look like a complete swindler and a scam artist and someone who can't possibly be believed. Kouri Richins is not going to have to contend with that same thing at her trial. And so as defense, you really want to limit and narrow the focus to the evidence or absence of evidence, including the absence of of important toxicology and substance analysis. And so I think that it only helps the defense here. I think that was a big ruling.
I want to ask you this, and I asked Bob Motta this the other day, because I think this could be a really interesting element to the story as a piece of evidence if it were to be admitted, and I don't know why it hasn't been. Hair. He's not cremated. He's still alive. The hair follicles still exist somewhere in a grave, and probably already samples sitting somewhere in an autopsy folder.
Or a hairbrush.
What's that?
Or a hairbrush.
Or a hairbrush. Well, I mean, it's been a couple of years, but somewhere. They're in existence, is the point being. Hair would show a lot. Hair would answer a big question of whether Eric was this active fentanyl drug user or not. I know Kouri's, the defense is, from what we can glean, kind of pointing to some direction of, see, Eric, he used illicit drugs from time to time. I know they want to try and bring up evidence from high school. I don't know that that's getting in. But high school evidence would mean nothing if those hair follicles showed a pattern of use. It's like the rings of a tree. It would show if he had been an active user of fentanyl for any period of time, or if it was just a spike at the end, or like never really, for that matter. This could be a huge boon to the defense of Kouri Richins. It could show a pattern of use where, well, look, it's very easy to overdose on this shit, and you ran out of luck, buddy. Or it can show he doesn't do it at all, and this is a very huge deviation in behavior. It's a dice roll that I don't know either side wants to throw down the table. What's your thoughts?
If I'm defense, oftentimes in these investigations, I'm a former prosecutor too, so from that side, you don't know exactly what analyses are going to be super pertinent to defenses because you don't know the defenses yet. Yeah. And so, the prosecution could have done this analysis early on. If I'm defense, I'm saying, hey, are you kidding me? This would perhaps answer the question as to whether this was an accidental overdose or something more nefarious, and the government didn't even bother to do a standard test that thousands of probation officers do all the time across the country. Why didn't they do that? That just shows an absence of evidence and a shoddy forensic investigation, and that's sort of the horse I'm riding if I'm defense.
Makes
what
sense.
about would there? Nobody knows quite what the answer would be to that. I mean, if it's out there, then the answer is out there already. But I've heard nothing of this, and maybe it'll come up in court. But without really truly knowing exactly how this is going to play out, I don't know. I mean, for the argument of truth and odds and reality, this is something that should be known. But when you're, picking a side of I want this or that to happen, it becomes a dice roll.
It does. And I think that those unknowns often inure to the benefit of defense. When I was a prosecutor, I would try to dot all of the I's, cross all of the T's, think about, hey, what is defense going to argue and how can I sort of ratchet this up and preempt that kind of a thing by additional investigation, by additional experts, that kind of thing. So when you have an unknown, that can often look suspiciously similar to reasonable doubt. And when you get to the trial phase, if the jury is left with all of these questions, that can be consistent with reasonable doubt.
Yeah, it's a question. I saw somebody said it only stays in 90 days. It does not. It stays in for much longer than that. I actually did research on this the other night because it was like this. Why? What is this? This seems like an interesting angle for this case that could answer a lot of questions. Prosecutors have Kouri's post-death Google search history, searches that include what is considered a lethal dose of fentanyl. That could be argued away as, you're curious what happened here. But then we get to luxury prisons for the rich in America. How long does life insurance companies take to pay? Can delete text messages be retrieved? Can cops force you to lie to a lie detector test? And when does FBI get involved in a case? So it goes from kind of like, I'm curious about what happened to my hubby to don't take me away. Her former attorney argued that those searches were just Kouri reacting to the investigation, not evidence of guilt. If you're the defense, how do you neutralize that search history in front of a jury? Because it's not very, yeah.
Can you?
Can you?
You know?
Other than say, everybody, la, 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 la.
yeah. Unfortunately, that one doesn't work so well. But if there were like one or two or three of those searches, it would be a lot more manageable because the jury's going to be instructed that they can view all the evidence in its totality. You don't have to view in isolation one search and say, that could have been explainable. But what about 3? What about 4? What about 5? And so if you do kind of say, hey, she's reacting to the investigation. You haven't had your spouse die before. You don't know what you might search. You might be frantic and you might be in a chaotic situation. You might not be in the right state of mind. So there are arguments that can be made, but there are certainly counter arguments to this.
Yeah.
Well, and how do you justify her having the party? And forgive me, I don't have the actual date, but it was very shortly after his death that she had the party. Is that right? How do you justify doing that?
Celebration of life.
But it wasn't. It had to do with the flipping of the house or the selling of the house.
Celebration of life, the life of a bank account where the husband's not going to say, you can't keep swindling money out of me.
Right.
It's celebration of life, ... And then parentheses on a very really low, small font on the big old vinyl poster that they put up outside of the house, Your thoughts in the comments section, everybody, on the defense of Kouri Richins and what we're looking at going into this trial. We're, of course, going to be covering it here for you every single day. Let us know in Substack and on YouTube. The defense has made noise, but the prosecution still has a mountain of evidence for 5 weeks of trial, an alleged prior poisoning attempt, a direct witness who says Kouri personally requested fentanyl, forged documents, damning digital evidence, and a financial timeline prosecutors say points to one conclusion. Eric Faddis, defense attorney, is with us to help break down the state's strongest arguments and what it takes to prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Eric, let's get into the prosecution of this. The attempted murder charge is from Valentine's Day. That's the original attempt back in 2022. Loving thing to do. The allegation is that Kouri laced Eric's favorite sandwich. I don't know, I really would love to know what the sandwich was, but that's not listed here. Maybe it's in the affidavit somewhere. But laced his favorite sandwich with fentanyl, left it in his vehicle. Then he goes to get it from work and eats it, breaks out in hives, loses consciousness like you do after eating your favorite sandwich. 2 friends say Eric called them saying his wife tried to poison him. It's kind of weird that's the first thing that's come into this guy's mind. His sister told authorities he believed Kouri had spiked his drink years earlier in Greece, so he's living in paranoia, and told family if anything happened to him, she was to blame. A new life insurance policy went into effect February 4th, 10 days before that Valentine's Day attempt. If the jury hears all of that in that order, how does that reshape the case?
I think it's going to be pivotal whether the jury believes that Kouri Richins did actually engage in this prior poisoning, because it obviously goes to her mental state. It shows a conscious objective. It shows planning over time. It shows that she had this outcome she was trying to get at. She failed the first time, but she didn't fail this subsequent time. And certainly if the jury believes it, that could tip the scales incredibly. We're not just talking about one poisoning, but multiple poisonings over time. Now, one thing is I'm not sure that Eric Richins, that all of his statements regarding that prior poisoning to other folks will be admitted into evidence. So it might be a little bit more difficult to get the jury to fully accept.
Despite Crosser's recantation, prosecutors they have Carmen Lauber. That's because there's a couple cogs in this wheel that get all the way to Eric. You got Eric over here who consumed the fentanyl. You got Kouri, who's alleged to have given it to him. Then you got Carmen Lauber, who procured it from Krauser. So it's several people. And this is an interesting thing that I think is going to get brought up, especially too when we're talking about the semantics of the name, of what exactly he thought he was selling or what he was selling or not selling, depending on how strung out he was at the time. The housekeeper still says Kouri directly asked her to buy fentanyl twice in early 2022, deliver the pills to the property. And after Valentine's Day attempt, Kouri asked for something stronger. And so this testimony is there. To take Krauser out of the situation, you got the backup, the one that's even closer, the one that's even more impactful, specifically saying Kouri asked for, quote, the Michael Jackson stuff, which is not fentanyl. That's propofol.
Yeah.
Totally different drug. But it also shows an utter confusion and lack of understanding of what she's even asking for. Is Lauber's firsthand account of Kouri's direct request more powerful than any supply chain evidence? And how does the prosecution protect her from the stand?
I think if the jury accepts the housekeeper's testimony about Kouri's requests for these drugs, that's going to be a huge problem for the defense. And, as prosecution, a lot of times, you're saying to the jury, hey, we don't pick our witnesses. We didn't choose these folks. These folks happen to be caught up in this. But the housekeeper, if they can establish that the housekeeper has no significant bias against Kouri Richins, that she has no significant interest in the outcome of the case, which that'll be questioned. But if they can, and especially too, how the housekeeper presents on the stand, just person to person, if she's believable and if she is straightforward and if she, owns any missteps she may have made or something like that, but still stands firm on her previous testimony, that could be the nail in the coffin for Kouri.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nails. There's a lot of nails and there's a lot of hammers heading this way right now. Like the walk the dog letter, that's another one. It was found in Kouri's jail cell, described by prosecutors as outlining false testimony for her mother and brother. The judge partially granted its admission. Separately, prosecutors have 5 pages from an orange notebook they call Kouri's firsthand account of the day Eric died, with details that allegedly conflict with other evidence. How does a prosecutor use the defendant's own writings to build premeditation when one document allegedly coaches witnesses and another contradicts the physical evidence itself?
Yeah, as a prosecutor, one thing I would encourage the jury to do, like I said, is view things in their totality, view them as a whole. The defense might have proposed alternative explanations for this internet search or for, the insurance policy or something. But when you look at this as a whole, you ask the jury to use their common sense and you say, hey, does this look like a person who is innocent? Are these the acts that an innocent person would take? All of these, internet searches about what prison might I be going to and stuff like that. And so I think you sort of encourage the jury to use their common sense in evaluating all of this and not be distracted by these alternative, innocent, proposed explanations by defense.
Yeah.
At what point? Oh, go ahead, Tony.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I don't want to change off of the walk the dog letter, but what also pops into my head is how do you justify her writing this book as well? And we can talk about the book later if you want to stay on the walk the dog. But to me, this book this is a glaring thing against her, I think.
Are you talking about the children's book?
Yeah, the children's book about, how to grieve, your dad, after he's gone. Is that a cathartic thing? Is that how you present that to a jury? Or is this like, hey, now she's even trying to profit off of the death? How do you frame this?
That's the thing. If you're the prosecutor, you're saying, hey, this person tried to poison their husband not once, but twice, took out this insurance policy. And then afterwards, after what would be a horrible tragedy to most, she sought to make some bucks off of the acts she committed. What a low-life scoundrel. You can't say that last part, but you can intimate it. If you're the prosecution, that's sort of how you're framing it. If you're defense, you're saying, hey, this was a person in mourning who was trying to be cathartic and explain away or explain a circumstance in her life that she thought could help others.
Which could be very powerful because I'm going to guess the big heartstring tug that the defense is going to use in this, and if you're not planning for this already, you're welcome, is going to be the kids.
Yep.
It's going to be, and look, she's a loving mother. She's trying to find a way to help her kids deal and grieve and work their way through this. And then their mother was ripped away from them.
Yep.
Don't keep this loving mother who wrote a book about their father away from them any longer.
Right, exactly. And that's,
Yeah.
and I've seen that you got to kind of be delicate in terms of how you make it, because the judge is going to say, hey, you can't just play upon the sympathies of the jury, but you could say, hey, she wrote a book and she has these kids and the dad is dead. And depending on the outcome of this trial, these kids might be suffering more. And, you kind of have to dance around it. But certainly a compelling narrative, especially if the jury's on the fence and reasonable doubt, that can tip the scales by saying, I'm not sure, but I'm going to err on the side of these kids having a mom.
And then you go back to, she just needs to get back home. These kids are starving for more of their mother's peanut butter and fentanyl sandwiches. And it's like, whoa. No, she should not go back at this point. But I don't know, it could be in the Kouri Richins recipe book. There's an idea for a cookbook, Kouri Richins recipes for prison.
Tony.
Peanut butter and fentanyl.
Dear. Yeah.
You have a little drink section, a little, snacks, appetizers, a little amuse-bouche. It'll be delicious. Handwriting expert Matt Throckman was the one prosecution expert the judge allowed without restriction. He's expected to testify about whether signatures on insurance and financial documents were actually Eric's. If the prosecution demonstrates Kouri forged her husband's signature on policies designed to pay her millions upon his death, does that single piece of evidence kind of merge fraud and murder motive into one narrative that the jury just can't really unsee?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would certainly be condemning for Kouri Richins because, looking to profit off of this and engaging in misleading and deceptive conduct. If you're the prosecutor saying, hey, that's kind of par for the course for Kouri Richins, she's done that in other parts of the trial. And the fact that she did it on these documents allegedly just makes it more likely that she has been misleading and deceptive and trying to cover this up in other instances. And so you kind of use it as a broad application to the other potential explanations that Kouri Richins has given. The handwriting expert could be big. We'll have to see if the jury accepts it.
What version of Kouri Richins do you think we see in court coming up on Monday here? Like physically, how is she going to present? Because that's a big thing. In every one of these cases, there is going to be some psychology behind that. What version would you advise Kouri Richins to present to a jury? How should she be looking? As silly as it is, but it makes an impact.
I think if your defense and you believe that your client is not guilty, a favorable presentation would be to the point where she is distraught and she's overwhelmed. I'm not saying crying during court all the time or something, but emotional and clearly in emotional distress. On top of that, I think that it would behoove her to show at least some indignation, saying, hey, not only did I lose my husband and my family, but now they're trying to pile on this wrongful murder charge. This is wrong. I'm wronged here. And it's a delicate balance. You can't come out and try to act like the hero in all of this. But I think a balance between emotional distress and indignation could play well to a jury.
Going to be fascinating to see where this goes. Your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube or Substack. Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi is what you search on either platform to find us. The links are also in the descriptions. Let's go on to another case that is making a lot of headlines. Colin Gray is now sitting in a Georgia courtroom facing 29 counts, including second-degree murder, because prosecutors say he handed his mentally deteriorating 14-year-old son an AR-style rifle as a Christmas present. after what the state describes as a years-long parade of warning signs he allegedly refused to act on. Like making collages on your wall of other school shooters. Like one may have posters up of, I don't know, this age. Here's how bad I am.
Here comes an 80s reference, everybody.
I know what would be back in the day would be like for people would be everything from like Britney Spears to Backstreet Boys to NSYNC to Destiny's Child. That would be, the 90s. I don't know what it would be today. Whatever that would be. Nobody in their right mind was putting up tributes to school shooters unless you were a school shooter. This is the second major trial in the U.S. testing whether parents can be held criminally responsible when their children carry out school shootings, and the prosecution's case against Colin Gray may be even more damning than what we saw with the Crumblies in Michigan. Former prosecutor Eric Faddis is here to break down every element of the state's case, dismantle the defense's strategy, and explain why the evidence trail that Colin Gray allegedly left behind could actually bury him. Eric, prosecutors have opened by saying this isn't about holding parents accountable for what their kids do. It's about what Colin Gray specifically did. It's not an across-the-board damnation for every parent that discovers they have a monster child that did something. The state alleges he was warned by the FBI, by law enforcement, by child welfare officials that his son was a potential threat. And his response was to buy him an Sig Sauer AR-15 style M400 for Christmas. From the prosecutor's perspective, how do you even begin to defend that sort of sequence of events?
I think you really highlight in detail all of the red flags, the numerous indications that the prosecution says Colin Gray had about how dangerous his son was and what his son was capable of. And I think you really go in painstaking detail. And I've even, in closing arguments, I've seen someone, they had not a pincushion, but something into which you can put these little pointed red flags, and they put them there, and they compiled something like 25 red flags. And this was a different case, but I'm just saying that approach to showing, hey, it wasn't one red flag, it wasn't two things, it was a series of events over a long period of time, and any reasonable person should have seen the writing on the wall.
This is going to change everything for parenting. At some point, parents are going to be responsible for everything that their kids do. And some kids are not controllable. So this just puts us into such a gray area. This controllable. You don't hand your child, a mentally deteriorating child, an AR style weapon or a weapon in general. But what happens if your kid supplies alcohol that you gave to your kid and then somebody goes and drives drunk? I mean, it starts this cascade of events, doesn't it?
I think there's a very real concern about that. In America, we have this school shooting problem, and it's horrendous, and it's not getting much better. And so I think that the legal system is reaching for options that it might have that it thinks might act as a deterrent. We saw the Crumblies parents being prosecuted in Michigan. Now we have Colin Gray. But there's certainly a risk as to how far can that go, and where does sort of fairness end and punitive measures take over, and is that really what we want?
Let's walk through the warning signs the prosecution laid out, because the timeline is staggering. In 2021, Colt allegedly searched how to kill your dad on a school computer, like you do. In May of 23, according to prosecutors, the FBI flagged online threats tied to Colt about a school shooting then. So the threats were coming, and investigators told Colin to restrict gun access. 7 months later, he allegedly gives his son a rifle for Christmas with accessories. Yeah, because you can't just have the gun; you got to get all the add-ons. Then, in August of 24, prosecutors say Colt texts his father, "Whenever something happens, just know the blood is on your hands." This is the person that is off the rails already, telling someone I'm off the rails and you're giving me the weaponry to make life even worse. Now, obviously, he does have his own set of choices to make, but he's screaming at you that I'm not capable of making rational choices, basically. Separately asks him to buy 150 rounds of ammo. So it's your responsibility. Give me some bullets. Dad does it. I mean, as someone who's prosecuted cases, how many of these red flags would you need before a reasonable person acts? And how many did Colin Gray allegedly blow past here? It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some indications that most parents would look at and say, oh gosh, not only is this concerning, not only should we consider some intervention, but we also got to consider some protective measures, like what was allegedly recommended that the child be restrained from any firearms. You don't then go get the kid a firearm. Like, I think that those red flags are certainly mounting in this case, and that's what the prosecution is going to use to show, hey, this dad disregarded a substantial and unjustifiable risk that this would happen. He provided the child with the opportunity to carry this out and the mechanism by which the child did so, and those are certainly critical elements.
The defense is arguing that Colin led a double life and hid his intentions from his father. It was all behind the curtain, which is bullshit. The hidden phone shows, the notes on the hidden phone show he was planning the attack for February 25 to coincide with the Parkland anniversary. And Colin had no way of knowing. Okay, so maybe there's one little element you didn't have. But prosecutors revealed that Colt allegedly had a shrine to Nicholas Cruz in his bedroom, and Colt's mother was allegedly aware of his attempts to contact the Parkland shooter in prison, even sent him money, and the defense itself argues she never warned Colin. So how, I mean, the signs are there. Maybe he didn't have the exact date. The kid's saying, it's going to be your fault when I do it. Can I have some money for bullets, Dad? I mean, so how does the defense simultaneously say Colin didn't know while the evidence shows the obsession was visible inside the home he controlled?
All fair points. I think the defense is going to argue that, hey, parenting is hard, and just parenting a non-troubled child is hard.
No shit.
Right? I just said that. No shit.
And when you have a child who is troubled, and you're a parent, like, what exactly are your options? You can't just lock the child in his room forever. I think the defense is probably going to say there are some things the dad did do to try to nurture and protect his child.
He didn't have to keep the kid locked. He just didn't have to buy him guns and bullets and accessories. He could have kept the door unlocked. He could have just been like, I'm not feeding the machine. I'm not feeding this little monster over here. But instead, he's like, what's the worst possible shit I can put into this machine? Let me give that to him. For some reason, the machinery working in the mind of Colin Gray, while the fire is already burning strong and taking over the brain of his son, clearly, he decides, you know what, let's get some more gasoline and pour that on. Is there any other accelerants we can find nearby? Let's do, everything other than water. Let's put on this. And then let's throw a couple M80s and dynamite in there, just for good fucking measure. I mean, that's exactly what he did. And then to be like, how did I know? Parenting's hard. No, I think breathing and living might actually be hard for you because your mind seems to work in this bizarro path that's the opposite of reality.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's the last thing you would want to do is give a volatile, unstable, potentially violent child a gun.
Yeah.
So when they're apparently worshiping a prior school shooter, I think this is going to be these trials are going to be a message to parents like, hey, you don't have to be perfect. You might not even have to be good under the law, but you can't be complicit in a horribly violent act and provide the instrument that your child uses to do that. I think that's really the message the prosecution is trying to send.
And there's a difference here between the Crumbleys in this case, and I think it's a big distinction because people are like, well, it's another one where the parents are being charged. Yes, but this is different, and this is why it matters because this is another precedent-setting case. The Crumbleys set it in one lane. This is another lane because it's a different charge that's going on here. So we have the Crumbleys, that one in Michigan, where both parents, they were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and both sentenced to 10 to 15 years. Colin Gray is facing second-degree murder charges, not manslaughter, which is a big difference. The legal theory here is that providing the weapon constitutes cruelty to children, and under Georgia law, causing a child's death through cruelty to children qualifies as second-degree murder. So is this a stronger or weaker legal framework than what was used against the Crumbleys? And does the charge elevation change the calculus for the jury at the end of the day?
I was reading the Georgia statute before we went on the air today, and I think that charge is weaker. I'm not sure that, there might be kind of a logical disconnect between a firearm and cruelty to children. You're not, menacing the child with the firearm. You're not pistol whipping the child. You're not shooting the child. You're providing a child with something. While it might be irresponsible, is that the same thing as cruelty? And then the second piece is, can they prove the causation element? They're going to have to prove that the dad was a substantial factor in causing the deaths of these 4 people in this school shooting. And defense is going to say, hey, wait a sec, I'll tell you who the main cause is. And it's this troubled kiddo who pulled the trigger.
Wow.
Can you show causation by inaction? Because you have action here, but you also have inaction at the same time. You have the action of buying the weapons and arming your kid, and then you also have the inaction of not parenting, of not playing your role as a parent, of stopping any of this, stopping your kid from the posters of the school shooters when he's warning you he's going to go do this shit, that it's your fault. I mean, you have both going on. You have just pure enablement, and then stand back and watch it burn is basically what went on here.
Yeah, usually you can actions and omissions or inaction can be a factual component of causation. What did this person do? What did they not do? Now, typically just holding off and not taking action, that'd be a very weak causation argument. But here, like you said, you kind of have both supplying the firearm and then also not following up, not intervening when they had knowledge that something really horrible could happen. If something happens, there's going to be blood on your hands, Dad. I think any dad would be like, whoa, what the hell do you mean? Like, we need to get a doctor involved. We need I don't know, possibly the police, a mental health professional. And it seems like none of those actions were taken. Did that substantially contribute to what happened? Prosecution is definitely going to say it did.
So is that why they haven't charged the mom, because she didn't give the gun, that they're focusing mainly on this gun as being this huge facet of this case, and that's why mom has not been charged?
I think that's a critical element, and whereas the mom kind of might be cast as an irresponsible parent who should have known more and should have done more, she did not take that overt step that really, enmeshes the father in this subsequent tragedy that happened at the school.
Wow.
Colin Gray is facing up to 180 years if convicted on all 29 counts. 25 witnesses testified on day 2 alone, including roughly 20 juvenile students who described being shot, seeing blood, and fearing they would die, all while sitting literally feet away from the defendant. With this level of emotional testimony from child victims, combined with what the prosecution alleges as a mountain of prior warnings, what's your honest assessment here of where the trial is headed for Colin?
I think that there's a reasonable likelihood of conviction. I think the defense is going to try to limit the heart-wrenching facts that are going to come forward, but the jury's going to be entitled to hear 4 people died. and the circumstances under which they died. Now they're probably not going to be able to get into all the blood and guts and stuff like that, but certainly the jury's going to look at this. 4 deaths. What was the source of that? What was the instrument that was used? From whom was that provided? And all of that points to Colin Gray.
Do you think this will change anything? Is this going to make anybody smarter? Is this going to make the parents out there, the Colin Grays of the world, that are so ignorant and so stupid that when they have a mentally ill child, they still get them the weapon because it's their right? I mean, I'm not against having weapons, so nobody take me that way. I'm saying I'm against mentally ill people, and I'm against adults arming their children that are mentally ill. But I think you probably have to be somewhat mentally ill yourself to think it okay to harm your mentally ill child. Is it going to change anything at the end of the day? Is it going to make I won't get in trouble? Is that going to change those folks, or are they already that far gone that they don't even know this is happening to begin with?
That's unclear, but what I'm hoping is that organizations like the NRA and organizations that really advocate and educate gun owners become to be more involved and sort of say, hey, look, for better or for worse, this is what the criminal justice system is doing when it comes to firearms and parents. This is what you need to know about the risks. This is what you need to know about ensuring that this doesn't happen, and also protecting your own ass as a parent. And perhaps some of these sources like the NRA, these potential parents would listen to them more than, somebody talking on a news station or something. So I'm just wondering if sort of the gun lobby and the gun folks might become more involved and might put out some more warnings and some more education on stuff like this.
Something.
Anything.
Like an electric shock collar that you put on your arm, and when your child picks up the weapon, it buzzes you. And you're like, oh, bad. No, put gun down. Bad. I don't know. I mean, because educating and informing and that, it completely eludes a jackass like Colin Gray. So hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully something. Very interesting to see this finally being prosecuted, and hopefully this will bring a lot more accountability to those that deserve it. Eric Faddis, defense attorney, as always, thank you for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Let's get your thoughts in the comment section, Substack, or on YouTube, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Just search that. The links are in the descriptions. We'd love to get your feedback on this and any of the stories that we're following for you right here. Until next time. For Eric, Stacy, and Todd, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
After Eric Richins died, Kouri didn't retreat. She called 911, spoke to investigators, gave media interviews, even published a children's book about grief while touring to promote it. Well, I mean, if you consider visiting the local, Good Day show at 10 a.m. touring. For 14 months, she maintained innocence until her arrest in May of 2023. You remember this? She was free for quite a while. Robin Dreek is with us. Robin, tempo tells. That framework is described to catch exactly this: the verbal and non-verbal deviations that reveal when someone is actively deceiving. We're going to break down how investigators likely read Kouri in real time and what her public performance has revealed and how the courtroom will expose them. I want to get into the book here. That's one of the most discussed aspects of the case, where people are like, what is this about? It's the children's book author. It's the one, Can You Hear Me? In March of 23, it was a year after Eric's death and 2 months before her arrest, Kouri published Oh, Are You With Me? Featuring Eric as an angel-winged father watching over their sons, and then did that little promotional tour on local TV. What is choosing to perform grief publicly at that scale tell you about somebody's confidence in their own deception? And what risks does that level of exposure create that they're willing to take?
She is so self-centered and so confident of her actions. It was unbelievable. So the book is not, I'm just thinking about this. So she loses her husband and grieving children or child, right? And so the first thing you decide to do is look at me, using sympathy, using, an assistance theme to garner, and also, she's monetarily thinking, she's like, hey man, I can really use the death of my husband to profit, I mean, it's literally what.
Yeah, I know.
So but here's the dumbest thing about the entire thing. So, if anyone turns on any show like ours, you have millions of people. I mean, one of the greatest industries growing in the world is the true crime industry, because there's so many people that are fascinated by really weird people doing crazy things. And so she spiked on really weird doing crazy things. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is you have so many pessimistic skeptics out there that as soon as you come out with a book, and you suffered what you suffered through, you're going to have a lot of people saying, I don't believe it. And whether it's true or not, that's what people say. And they're going to dig deep. And that's when you get exposed and uncovered, because you'll have the cyber sleuths out there, rightly or wrongly, because a lot of times they'll do, people come up with amazing conspiracy theories that are just bonkers. But every now and then you got a thread of truth in there. And this is one of them that you can just envision it. Someone's watching that morning show, and here's this mom coming on who just lost her husband, has now created a children's book around it. I mean, that just sounds odd. So you can just see some person that sits around all day long watching true crime saying, that's weird, let me look at this, and all of a sudden, boom.
But I think you probably get more people, honestly, Robin, looking at that segment going, oh, isn't that sweet? And her reasoning, she's saying it's to help my children grieve. And you could make a little book and just have it for your kids at home too. You don't have to go publish it. I mean, that can be, it's a private thing. At least for most of us it is. But you have a lot of people that are going to sit there and just eat that shit up. And then if you're on the sideline going, wait a second, oh no, she couldn't possibly be like that. So I mean, it works. I guess it was a calculated move on her part. Yeah. But maybe it was pushing herself a little bit too far in one direction. She already, she was a widow. She was raising kids on her own and all that. She already had, folks looking at her going, gosh, that's tough. That, maybe there's, you put a little bit too much on the scale there, or she put a little too much on that scale, and it kind of tipped it in the wrong direction.
Yeah, so here's where it's super backfired. And you're right. It sounds like a wonderful, heartwarming story of someone trying to move on with grief and help their family deal with grief. And yeah, it pulls at the heartstrings. But the problem with this is, if it backfires and when it backfires, what you've just done is you've created an entire massive group of people that were originally sympathetic and empathetic towards you. You've now turned them all against you, all of them, because people do not like feeling duped. And when you do, now vengeance sits in, now resentment builds. And so that is more contagious than the goodwill she is trying to spread. And so it completely backfires on anything she was attempting to do. And then at the end of the day you got to ask yourself, was it worth it? Because for the few dollars she's going to make off of book sales compared to the multi-million she was getting on insurance claims, But also, and so this also rings to her over self-confidence. Is she's had so much leakage of crazy throughout her entire life that all it took was one investigator listening and watching this episode to say, that's a bit odd because it doesn't fit the tempo. I didn't look up the stat. I'm dying to do it right now. It's like, how many widows of someone who dies tragically write a book?
I wonder if there is a stat. Is there? I don't know. There must. I don't know.
Maybe a stat for everything, right? Yeah. And so I'm going to tell you. I'm guessing we're talking single digits.
Oh, very low, like 0.00. I mean, it's got to be so low.
Now, when people die of a tragic disease, people form foundations and things like this. But this one was so out of the ordinary and weird. But she drew attention to herself again, and then all it took was just pull back the first level of crazy, and all of a sudden it all comes cascading down. You have all the weird stuff with finances. You have, again, how many life insurance policies does someone take out on someone?
Yeah.
That is them just.
Well, and the thing is with her, and I don't know if she has a diagnosis or anything like that, so pure speculation. But you can glean. I'm gleaning what her personality profile is, and likely what she maybe has. I'm guessing she's probably a borderline or something in that dark triad of shit show. That's a very technical term, dark triad of shit show. But somewhere over there, because it's like she went to the borderline convention, and this is the joke that everybody who's dealt with borderlines knows, is because they all do the same shit. They all follow the same path. They all pull the same levers, and they think they're just as clever as the next one. And they all like, why is this not? Why, I mean, and when we look at it, and a lot of it, a big thing is control. A big thing is being also feeling as if they're being disrespected as well. And so her walk the dog letter. She's in prison. But she's still trying to control the narrative through code to her mom and brother. And then, well, it's not that, it's something. And they believe that whatever bullshit they pull is out of their whatever is like, oh, of course they'll believe it because I said it out loud. I'll believe it. But again, that's sort of, I guess that sort of belief that people are going to always just take you at your word, that's got to come from some reps. And if you were raised in that sort of an environment, suddenly when the world doesn't take you seriously anymore, or just believe every word that comes out of your mouth, that's kind of a shock to their system.
Yeah, no guardrails and no accountability for actions creates that after years and decades of reps. And typically what happens in cases when individuals like this that are high functioning deceivers is what she is that as soon as they are confronted, that becomes a straw that pushes them over the edge to violence. And so after being confronted with all this things she was doing, that most likely, if guilty, was a thing that shifted her over to the violence end. Because again, it's an arc and she had no violence in the past. And because people ask, how can someone do this? Well, if you're on a behavior pattern of control, image, finance, and all of a sudden someone confronts you on your deception, because her arc was deception. She had a lifelong arc of deceiving others and controlling the narrative, what people thought about her. And as soon as someone confronts her with the truth and reality, that's when she snapped and freaked out.
All right, let's do the prediction game we're about to get into the trial. We don't know how she's going to be presenting in court, and the way someone presents sometimes in pretrial hearings and stuff, I'm talking physically, is not the same as it is when it's actually time to go to trial and the day one and the gavel drops. How do you think she's going to present in court, knowing that she's got some reps and manipulation? Number one, how do you think she's going to present, and how do you think she should present if she wants to sway a jury in her favor?
I think she's going to present pretty well right off the get-go, and I think she's going to be very controlled. She's got a lot of reps in swaying people's opinions and decisions about her. And what's going to happen is it'll be interesting when she's challenged by the prosecution for the things that she did, and if the prosecution is good at poking at her and confronting her, it'll be interesting to see if any anger or rage bubbles up from her and frustration. If, again, depending on what they shove at her and force her to confront, it'll be interesting looking at her timelines that she's created in her own mind, and if the reality of it's different, it'll be really, really interesting. I think she'll present well. It'll be interesting what she does under cross and things like that, and how she responds to people not thinking she's truthful, because I think that's where she'll start potentially getting unraveled and angry. Maybe, we'll see.
I wonder if she takes the stand. I mean, too early to really predict. Do you think she will? I
think she'll want to.
Yeah.
Because she sees herself as a sympathetic character. That's why she wrote the book. I think her attempt will be to appeal to the empathy of others as a single mom that lost her husband. And it's a compelling story if you believe her story. But that's her problem, is that it'll be interesting if anyone believes her story.
It'd be interesting how she presents. We've seen a lot of interesting cases where you have claims of abuse and such that are unsubstantiated. She has claims here. Do you remember the ballerina, the Ashley Benefield?
Yeah.
When she was on the stand and they had to stop court because she was getting so emotional on the stand. I wonder. I wonder if we're going to see anything of that nature here. I don't know.
I'd imagine we do. It'll be. So I think, again, conjecture. Will we see an attempt at fake tears? Will we see an attempt at fake emotion? Yeah, I think so, because she ain't going to have any real ones, because if she did, she wouldn't have done what she did. And so I think it'll be really interesting, because that's what everyone's going to be watching if she does take the stand, or even just watching her in court. It'll be really interesting. She'll be putting on a show. It'll be interesting what show she's just. So here's an interesting way to look at it. She will be putting on a show, because everyone in court, especially when you're the accused, puts on a show. It'll be interesting to see what show she decides to put on, because she's not going to listen to what the lawyer says, because she's always right. So it'll be interesting to see what she decides to do that she thinks is in her best interest. I'm betting on the empathy, sympathy, look at me, woe is me side.
Do you think she's going to go for the very plain, more, safe, matronly type look? I'm a safe character. I'm just, a widow and that, or is she gonna, as we've seen with some other defendants, where it's court day and it's like, oh God, are they going out to the club? Is she gonna go for like sexy version of herself, or is she going to go for I'm really subdued? I don't know, because I think that's going to be a battle in her mind, honestly, because she's about her image and she likes being looked at and she likes to look a certain way. And I think we've seen kind of variations in her look in court so far, like she's been kind of testing the waters.
Well, that's what I think she's going to do. I think she's going to get a lot of guidance from her defense attorney based on what they do for jury selection. I think it's going to probably be, if she's smart about it, she's going to do what she thinks will sway the jury one way or the other. I mean, she should. I would think that she's going to. What she should do is have a smart presentation where she looks put together. She looks, but at the same time, smart yet sympathetic. But again, I don't know what she'll be allowed to wear. Is she allowed to wear anything other than her prison clothes in this?
I believe she. I could be wrong. It might be completely.
She's not on release right now. That's right, because she's actually not in jail right now. She's actually on release. Correct? So, yeah. She's got GPS monitoring on.
So we don't. Yeah, so I imagine it's going to be what she wants to choose to wear in court. But it'll be. I don't know. It'll be fascinating, because it's always.
So think about it. So it would be mom. So I think part of the plea here will be, you can't take me from my kid.
Yeah.
And I'm
that's
just a
going to
mom.
be the big thing. Yeah.
I'm a mom that suffered a tragic thing by my drug addicted husband. Always me.
And are you going to go for full blown acquittal, or again, that's why I kind of say, is she going to go and play the other card of look, I'm kind of attractive, and go for. Hopefully there's a dopey guy on the jury that is like, I can't see her doing this, because people make stupid decisions based on stupid things.
So here's an interesting thing that we might start seeing happen. I think she's going to go for the full acquittal that she'll want to do, but I think she's going to. What we might see is a lot of deviations on the fly.
Yeah.
If she's seeing that things aren't working, well, we'll try this. We'll try that. I think we'll see a lot of different faces of her throughout this.
I think that may be very right. It's like 1 week you get this one, and the next week you get the other. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
She's going to be studying. My conjecture. She's going to be studying that jury and their reactions to her. So very, very Donald Adelson like. Every time Donna would have an outbreak, she's catching a glance out the side of her eye. Who's watching? No one's watching. Okay, forget it. It's
like, Donna, just keep your eyes down. It's more believable. Yeah. You can watch the replay later.
I think we're going to get a lot of that. That's what I think. I think it's going to be performative. I think it's going to be which all courtrooms are.
It is. I'm just curious. I'm wondering what kind of performance she's going to put on. Your thoughts in the?
I think it's going to be all over the place. Sorry.
Your thoughts in the comment section on Substack or on YouTube. Just search "Hidden Killers" with Tony Bruschi, and you will find us, and you can weigh in.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now, and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.